At 9:07 on the morning of June 29th, 1944, the air near Villiers-Faussard, France, is thick with the smell of diesel and damp earth. Inside the cramped, suffocating turret of an M4 Sherman tank, Staff Sergeant Lafayette Poole squints through his periscope. He watches, his nerves taut, as shadows detach themselves from the dense hedgerows 300 yards ahead. German infantry, shifting positions, preparing for the inevitable. Poole is 24 years old. He has 0 combat missions, 0 tank kills. His war is about to begin. His unit, the formidable 3rd Armored Division, had clawed its way onto Omaha Beach just 6 days prior. A late arrival in the Normandy maelstrom. Now, Poole's battalion is poised to assault a heavily fortified German salient. A bulge in the line held by the battle-hardened 353rd Infantry Division. This is the infamous bocage, the hedge country, a tactical nightmare of small fields, high earthen banks, and sunken lanes, perfectly suited for defense. It is a landscape that negates the American advantage in air power and mobility, turning the advance into a brutal, yard-by-yard knife fight. Every tanker in the regiment, from the greenest replacement to the most seasoned NCO, understands the terrifying mathematics of their situation. The math is simple, and it is fatal. Their M4 Shermans, the workhorse of the Allied invasion, carry a 75mm gun. It's a reliable weapon, effective against infantry and fortifications. But against German armor, it is a pea shooter, the enemy they face. The German Panthers mount long-barreled, high-velocity 75mm guns that possess twice the penetrating power. And then there is the beast itself, the Tiger, packing the legendary 88mm gun, a weapon that can punch clean through a Sherman's frontal armor from 2,000 yards away, a distance at which the Sherman crew cannot even hope to see their attacker. A Sherman, by contrast, cannot penetrate a Panther's sloped front plate at any range. The American tankers are, by every metric, outgunned, out-armored, and fighting in a steel coffin. This disparity wasn't an accident, it was a strategic choice. The M4 Sherman was a product of the arsenal of democracy, a weapon built not to be the best, but to be enough. It was designed for reliability, for ease of maintenance, and crucially, for mass production and transatlantic shipping. The strategic calculation in Washington was that 5 Shermans, easily built and shipped, could overwhelm one complex, over-engineered Tiger. Now, men like Lafayette Poole are tasked with proving that grim arithmetic on the ground. Poole, in an act of what seemed like grim humor or outright insanity, had named his tank In the Mood, after the popular Glenn Miller song. His new crew, men he had trained with but never fought with, thought he was crazy. They were a tight unit, forged over 2 long years of drills and exercises at Fort Knox and in the blistering heat of the Desert Training Center in California. Corporal Wilbert Richards, the driver, Private First Class Bert Close, manning the bow gun, Corporal Willis Aller at the main gun, Technician 5th grade Del Boggs, the loader. 4 men who had endlessly practiced a deadly ballet, but none had ever fired a shot at a real target that fired back. The attack order finally crackles over the radio at 0900. Task Force X moves left. Task Force Y moves right. Poole's Sherman, in the mood, lurches forward, rolling through a gap in the hedgerow freshly cut by specialized bulldozer tanks. The German response is immediate and overwhelming. The air rips apart with the distinct, terrifying crack of high-velocity anti-tank guns. Within the first 5 minutes, 3 Shermans in Poole's column erupt in plumes of fire and black smoke. They don't just explode, they are systematically erased, their crews incinerated before they can even register the attack. Through the chaos, Poole spots movement. A German half-track, 400 yards out, he bellows the order. Oehler fires, a hit, the vehicle burns. It is Poole's first kill, the adrenaline spikes, but there is no time for triumph. 3 more half-tracks appear, then an armored car, then a supply truck. Oehler and Boggs work in frantic rhythm. Identify, load, fire, destroy. But the hedgerows make visibility a living hell. German infantry, masters of this terrain, fire Panzerfaust rockets from the cover of the dense foliage, sometimes from as close as 30 yards. Poole and his crew can't see them until the white streak of the rocket's exhaust is already flying toward their tank. At 14:30, their luck runs out. A Panzerfaust, fired from ambush, strikes the "in the moods" right track. The explosion is deafening, throwing Poole violently against the hard steel of the turret wall. A new, terrifying smell fills the compartment. Fire. Richards, instinctively, slams the tank into reverse, backing 20 yards while thick, acrid smoke floods the interior. Poole, choking, gives the only order left. Everyone out. All 5 men scramble from the hatches, tumbling to the relative safety of the French mud. They survive. Their tank does not. That night, 31 other Sherman crews in Combat Command A are not so lucky. In 2 days of fighting for a single, insignificant village against 1 reinforced German battalion, the command is gutted. Poole stands in that dark French field, watching his first command, his first tank, burn against the twilight. The armor was too thin. The gun was too weak. German tanks killed from ranges where American crews couldn't even see the muzzle flash. Every surviving tanker in the 3rd Armored Division knew these facts. Most accepted them as the tragic, unavoidable price of war. But Lafayette Poole did not. The next morning, Lafayette Poole requested a meeting with his battalion commander. The colonel, a man already aged by the horrific losses of the past 2 days, expected to see a shell-shocked sergeant. Another face haunted by the inferno, asking for a transfer to the relative safety of the infantry. What he got was something else entirely. Poole was quiet, covered in soot, but his eyes were cold and clear. He asked for a replacement tank. The colonel, taken aback, began the paperwork. Then Poole said something that made the officer stop and question the sergeant's sanity.
To ensure a breakthrough,
he wanted to lead every attack. He wanted the front position. The point. Every single time. The colonel, incredulous, asked why. Poole's answer was 3 words that would redefine American armor tactics. Get in close. This was not bravery born of arrogance. It was a cold, brutal calculation forged in the flames of his destroyed Sherman. Poole had done the math. The official U.S. Army doctrine, the book, was getting them killed.
No room!
The book said to keep distance, fire from cover, and use the terrain. It said to let specialized M10 tank destroyers handle enemy armor. But in the claustrophobic hell of the Normandy hedgerows, there was no distance, cover, was just a place to be outflanked. And the tank destroyers, with their open turrets and thin armor, were being hunted just as viciously as the Shermans. The doctrine was a fantasy, and Poole was done with fantasies. On July 1st, he got his second Sherman. It was an M4A1, a slight upgrade, but with one crucial difference: a new 76mm gun. This was a significant improvement in muzzle velocity and penetration, yet it was still not the solution everyone hoped for. Against the thick, sloped frontal armor of a Panther,
Fresh from the depot,
it was ineffective beyond 500 yards. But for Poole,
in the mood,
500 yards was an eternity. He named the new tank In the Mood. Same name, different tank, same crew: Richards, Close, Aller, and Boggs. They had survived one burning wreck together, a bond forged in terror. Now they had to see if Poole's insane new tactic would keep them alive, or simply kill them faster. The crew thought he'd lost his mind. Doctrine was more than a manual. It was a religion, and its first commandment was, "Thou shalt not charge heavy German armor." Richards, the driver, finally asked if Poole had a death wish. Poole's answer was not a reassurance. It was cold mathematics. A Sherman dies at 2,000 yards from a Panther. A Panther dies at 300 yards from a Sherman. The entire war, for them, existed in the 1,700 yards between those two numbers. His conclusion was terrifyingly simple: close the distance, survive. It was suicide by the book. But the book was written by men who weren't watching 31 tanks burn in a single field. Combat Command A, refitted and reinforced, began the push east from the Normandy breakout toward Mortain in early August. Poole's platoon led. Always.
Forward.
He insisted on it, his voice over the radio cutting through any objection. On August 2nd, near the village of Juvigny, the moment of truth arrived. Poole's sharp eyes, constantly scanning, spotted them. Two German Mark V tanks Panthers, sitting in ambush at 800 yards. Standard doctrine was explicit: halt, fire from cover, pop smoke, call for artillery, wait for the tank destroyers. Poole grabbed the radio handset. His order was one word: forward. Then to Richards: full speed, straight at them. The crew's blood ran cold. Richards, trusting his commander over his own survival instincts, slammed the gear shift. The Sherman lurched, its engine screaming as it accelerated to its maximum 25 miles per hour, charging directly at two of the most feared predators on the battlefield. The German crews in the Panthers saw it. A single, lone Sherman, charging them across an open field. They hesitated. For 3 critical seconds, their minds could not process what they were seeing. Why would an American tank commander do something so tactically stupid, so utterly suicidal? It had to be a trick. Or was the tank damaged? Its driver panicked. That 3-second pause, born of German arrogance and doctrinal certainty, was exactly what Poole had gambled on. 800 yards became 600. 600 became 400. The first Panther, its crew finally reacting, began to traverse its long 88mm gun. Too late. Fire! Poole roared. Oehler, his hands steady, fired. The 76mm armor-piercing round, fired at a range the Germans thought impossible, struck the first Panther. It exploded. The second Panther's turret swung violently toward Poole. Aller and Boggs were already a blur of motion. The breach clanged open, The smoking shell ejected. A new round rammed home. Fire! Aller fired again. A clean penetration. The second Panther went silent, smoke seeping from its hatches.
The round deflects harmlessly
2 kills.
off the Panther's superior armor.
40 seconds. Poole's aggressive, almost nihilistic tactic had worked. Not because his gun was better, but because he had fundamentally broken the enemy's decision-making cycle. Panzer commanders were trained to be snipers, to engage in long-range duels where their superior optics and high-velocity guns dominated. They expected American tanks to stop and trade shots from 1,000 yards, where every exchange was a statistical victory for the Reich. When a Sherman charged instead, it shattered their script. That hesitation, that moment of confusion, was all Poole needed. At close range, against a 76mm gun,
The Allied pincer
3
movement
seconds
closed
meant death.
inexorably around the German
This was no
7th
longer
Army
a
near
tactic.
Falaise,
It was a
sealing
system.
Falaise's pocket.
And the system worked. The 3rd Armored Division, with Poole's platoon often acting as its scalpel, raced east through France in mid-August. This was the great breakout, the race to the Seine. A high-speed pursuit aimed at trapping the entire German 7th Army in what would become known as the Falaise Pocket. Poole's aggression, once seen as suicidal recklessness, was now the perfect instrument for this new, fluid phase of the war. He led every advance, his tank a brutal battering ram. On August 13th, near Fremantle, the system was tested again. Spotting an enemy armor column, Poole didn't hesitate. Forward, Richards charged. 2 Panthers and 2 Mark IVs, all well-positioned, all superior on paper, were turned into burning scrap. Poole's tally was rising. His crew stopped questioning the insanity. They had seen it work. They had survived. Now, they were perfecting it. The skepticism that had haunted the new crew of In a Mood evaporated, replaced by a cold, lethal professionalism. They were no longer 5 men in a tank. They were a single, integrated weapon system, an extension of Poole's will. Corporal Aller became the fastest gunner in the regiment, his hands a blur as he acquired targets, fired, and acquired the next. Technician 5th grade Boggs, the loader, matched him, achieving a reload time of just 4 seconds for the 76mm rounds. A furious rhythm of slam, fire, eject, slam. Private Close, on the bow machine gun, became their shield, laying down such a precise and terrifying volume of fire that German infantry carrying Panzerfausts were cut down before they could even get their weapons shouldered. And Richards, the driver, had learned the most terrifying lesson of all: to accelerate toward the muzzle flash, to embrace the chaos, to drive straight into the enemy's fire instead of away from it. Poole's reputation began to spread like wildfire through the 3rd Armored Division. He became a legend, a folk hero. Infantry units, battered and weary, began to request him specifically for their attacks. They knew that if Poole's tank was leading the charge, the path would be cleared. His battalion commander, the same man who had once questioned his sanity, stopped trying to keep him in reserve. He simply pointed Poole at the toughest part of the German line and let him loose. By the 1st of September, in just 63 days of continuous, brutal combat, Lafayette Poole had destroyed 8 confirmed Panzers and over 100 other vehicles. He was the division's ace, the man who had proven the experts wrong. But war is a chaos of variables, and the greatest threat on the battlefield is not always the one in front of you. On August 17th, near Fremantle, just after their string of victories, In the Mood was clearing the last enemy forces from the village. The firefight was dying down. Suddenly, an American P-38 Lightning, a fork-tailed devil, appeared overhead. The P-38 pilot, scanning the ground, saw what he believed was a German tank column moving through the village. Except they weren't German. Poole's platoon was mopping up. The Lightning, one of the most powerful fighter bombers in the U.S. arsenal, dove. Poole saw the aircraft line up for a strafing run. He grabbed the radio handset, screaming to call off the friendly aircraft. He was too late.
How many times?
The P-38's for the 50 caliber machine guns and single 20mm cannon opened fire. A terrifying roar that ripped the air apart. Heavy rounds punched through the In the Mood's thin engine deck armor. Then the pilot fired his rockets. One slammed into the turret. Another hit the hull. For the second time in 7 weeks, Poole's world was fire, smoke, and the smell of burning steel. Bail out. For the second time, the crew scrambled from a burning wreck. Miraculously, no casualties. They tumbled to the ground, watching their second tank, their lucky tank, be consumed by flames. Richards, the driver, was furious, cursing the sky. Close was shaking, the shock of the betrayal, for that's what it felt like, overwhelming him. Aller just stared, numb, at the burning Sherman. Boggs, the loader, his voice hollow, asked how many times they would have to survive this. Poole, his face black with soot, gave the only answer he had. As many as it takes. The battalion, now entirely dependent on Poole's leadership, gave him his third tank the very next day. Another M4, a one with a 76mm gun. He named it In the Mood. Tank number 3. The war did not wait. The Falaise pocket had closed, and the German 7th Army, once a mighty force, was now a shattered wreck. The strategic map of Europe was being redrawn by the day. Paris was liberated on August 25th, a moment of profound symbolic victory. But for the men of the 3rd Armored Division, the fight was far from over. The division crossed the Seine River on August 26th, a massive armored column pushing northeast at astonishing speed, driving toward the Belgian border and the heartland of the Reich itself. And at the very tip of this spear, as always, was Lafayette Poole. His tactics, once dismissed as the ravings of a suicidal sergeant, were now battalion doctrine. Get close, fire first, win. It was the new gospel, and Poole was its preacher. From August 29th through the 31st, Poole's platoon spearheaded the advance through a sector held by the battered remnants of the German 2nd Panzer Division. His tank, the 3rd, In the Mood,
relentless accuracy of
rolled
the artillery
alone,
proved devastating.
far ahead
In
of the main
moments,
task
the Panzer
force,
Division lost 3
a lone
critical
hunter
tanks.
in hostile territory. Richards, his driver, his hands tight on the controls, looked over at his commander. "Shouldn't we wait for support?" Poole's reply was flat. No. At dawn on August 29th, they encountered 4 German Panzers near a desolate crossroads. The German crews, likely veterans of the Eastern Front, were well positioned, waiting in ambush. They had the advantage. But they had never met Lafayette Poole. Poole spotted them. 800 yards, 600, 400. He gave no other order than forward. He charged. Oehler, a master of his craft, fired. The 1st Panzer exploded. German return fire, panicked and rushed, missed. Poole closed the distance, plunging into what tankers called the killing zone, as if it were a sanctuary. 200 yards, Aller fired again. Second Panzer destroyed. Then the third, then the fourth. All 4 German tanks were burning hulks within 6 minutes. It was a staggering display of aggressive dominance, a validation of his entire theory of armored warfare. Over the next 3 days, Poole's single tank became a one-man blitzkrieg. He destroyed 3 more anti-tank guns, approximately 50 other armored vehicles, and an overwhelming number of enemy infantry. His rampage was so terrifying that 27 German soldiers surrendered to his tank directly, emerging from their positions with their hands raised after watching their supporting armor be systematically annihilated. For these actions, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. The official citation read that his unflinching courage and inspired leadership permitted the rapid advance of his task force with minimum casualties. What it didn't say, what it couldn't say, was that Poole had achieved this by violating every tactical principle in the U.S. Army Manual. He had survived and won precisely because German tank commanders, trained in their own rigid doctrine, could not believe anyone would be that aggressive, that insane. By early September, Poole's personal war diary was a ledger of almost unbelievable destruction. 12 confirmed Panzers destroyed, a mix of Panthers, Mark IVs, and even one Tiger that had made the fatal mistake of exposing its thinner side armor. His total vehicle count had reached a staggering 258. Half-tracks, armored cars, self-propelled guns, supply trucks, anything German with wheels or tracks. He was credited with over 1,000 enemy killed and 250 prisoners taken. 81 days of continuous, non-stop combat. The 3rd Armored Division was now approaching the German border, the dreaded Siegfried Line. Poole's crew, the men who had charged hell with him and survived, were finally scheduled to rotate home. They were to be sent on a war bonds tour. Lauded as heroes, a testament to American fighting spirit. They had survived 3 destroyed tanks. They had beaten every Panzer they encountered. They had just 4 more days of combat before they could go home. On September 19th, 1944, Poole's battalion was ordered to attack the Siegfried Line at Münsterbusch, southeast of Aachen. This was not the open field fighting of France. This was a fortress, a dense network of concrete pillboxes, dragon's teeth, and interlocking fields of fire. For the first time in months, Poole was not leading. Orders from high command, likely wanting to protect their star tanker before his tour, had placed his platoon on flank security, while another unit spearheaded the main assault. It was a change in routine, and in combat, a change in routine is often a harbinger of doom. As they moved into position, Poole's experienced eyes scanned the urban landscape. He spotted it. A German anti-tank gun, perfectly hidden in the rubble of a house, just 300 yards away. Its barrel aimed directly at the main American advance. Poole ordered his gunner to load high explosive. Destroy that gun before it can fire. But Corporal Aller, the fastest gunner in the regiment, wasn't there. He had been temporarily transferred back to the United States a few days prior for a medical evaluation, just before the crew's scheduled rotation. The gunner in the seat was a replacement. The loader was Private First Class Paul Kenneth King, also a replacement. This was his first combat mission. King, desperate to prove himself, grabbed a 76 millimeters round and shoved it into the breech. Too hard, too fast. The round jammed. As Poole worked frantically to clear the gun, the German crew, patient and professional, fired first. Their round struck the "In the Moods" turret. The impact was deafening, throwing Poole against the commander's hatch, but the armor, just barely, held. Richards, his training instantaneous, slammed the transmission into reverse. "Back up! Get to cover!" The Sherman rolled backward 20 feet, but the German crew was already reloading. Poole was still fighting the jammed gun. He yelled at Richards to back up faster. The second round hit. This time, it struck the tank's right side, just as it tipped backward over the edge of a ditch. The 75 millimeters armor-piercing round punched through the steel as if it were paper. The explosion was catastrophic, flipping the 30-ton Sherman completely over. The 30-ton Sherman, flipped by the force of the explosion, was a tomb. The impact threw Lafayette Poole clear of the commander's hatch, a violent, ragdoll ejection that sent him crashing to the hard earth 12 feet below. He landed on his right leg. The sound was not a crack, but a wet, sickening fold. The bone shattered in 4 places. For a moment, the world was a high-pitched whine. Then the pain, a white-hot nova, exploded. He looked down. His right leg was twisted at an impossible angle, a ruin of flesh and fabric. Blood was not seeping. It was pumping, soaking through his trousers in dark arterial spurts. A large shell splinter had sliced through his calf and thigh. His war, his 81-day streak of impossible victories, had ended in a fraction of a second. Not because his tactic had failed, but because of a jammed gun and a green replacement. Inside the overturned, smoke-filled hull, Private First Class Paul Kenneth King, on his first combat mission, was dead, killed instantly by the penetrating round. The rest of the crew, his veterans, fought their way out. Richards crawled from the driver's hatch. Close squeezed through the bow gunner's position. Del Boggs emerged from the loader's hatch, his uniform covered in blood.
You all look splendid.
It was not his.
All right, have a seat.
It
The
was
Army's changing,
King's.
and we're looking for
Poole,
good men.
lying in the mud, fought the darkness. His training took over.
Ensuring the
He
logistical
fumbled for the
backbone
morphine
of the war
syringe
effort.
in his first
Every
aid pouch.
shipment required official
A small,
approval.
simple tool for an unimaginable agony. He jammed it into his thigh. The pain was still overwhelming, a tidal wave that threatened to pull him under. He could see white fragments of bone through the torn flesh. His leg was barely attached. In a moment of pure, terrifying clarity, he understood he was bleeding out. Medics wouldn't make it in time. He pulled out his pocket knife. With a gritting determination that
Here we see
defined
the
his
start of
entire
what would become
military
known as
career,
Poole's
he
42nd
began to
charge,
cut through the
resulting
remaining
in
tissue.
2 confirmed
Better to
kills.
lose the leg here and now than to bleed out waiting for a rescue that might never come. It was the same cold mathematics he had always
This
used.
right here is your intake valve.
Close
If
the
clearance is
distance.
off by more than 10,000,
Survive.
you'll lose compression across
He
the
was
entire
applying
shoulder
the
bank.
same principle to his own body. Just as he began to cut, Lieutenant Colonel Walter Richardson, his battalion commander,
That's the spirit, gentlemen.
ran
Keep
up
that up
and
you'll be ready
physically
for
stopped
anything
him,
the field throws at you.
grabbing his
Now,
hand.
about the carburetor.
Richardson, seeing the wound, administered a second morphine injection. Medics arrived 30 seconds later. A third injection. They wrapped the leg in bandages thick with sulfa powder. The bleeding slowed, but it didn't stop. As they lifted him onto a stretcher, Poole, his body on fire, cursed the Germans. He twisted suddenly, his hand lashing out, and grabbed Richardson's arm. His words were a thick, pained slur, slurred from the shock and the drugs. "Somebody take care of my tank." It was the last order he would ever give in combat. Richardson, his voice strained, promised he would. Lafayette Poole passed out. The war was over for him. His 81-day
Bronze
rampage
Star,
across
the Purple
France
Heart,
and into Germany was
Belgian
finished.
Fourragère,
The
and
final
French
tally was
Legion
a
of Honor.
testament to his unique brand of warfare. 12 confirmed Panzer kills, 258 total vehicles destroyed, over 1,000 enemy killed, 250 captured. 3 tanks had burned under him.
The crew of
He
In
had
the
survived
Movement,
2.
Tank number 1.
The 3rd,
5 faces bound
on
by
the
a
very
camaraderie
border
that
of
would
the
soon be
Reich,
tested in the crucible
cost him
of
his
war.
right leg. Army surgeons at a field hospital in Belgium had no choice.
My team.
They amputated 8 inches above the knee. Poole spent the next 22 months in a new kind of war, a war against his own body and the ghosts of his past.
Yeah, we couldn't have
He was
done it
moved
without
from
the
William
whole
Beaumont
crew.
General Hospital in El Paso, Texas, to Lawson General Hospital in Georgia. He learned to walk, then to live, with a heavy, rudimentary prosthetic leg. He was discharged in June 1946. For most soldiers, this would have been the end. Go home, open a business, live a quiet life, be thankful for survival. But Lafayette Poole was not most soldiers. He went home to Sinton, Texas, and opened a filling station, then a garage. He married his sweetheart, Evelyn. They had 8 children, 4 sons, 4 daughters. He walked on that wooden prosthetic. It ached constantly. He never complained, but the quiet life was a prison. Running a gas station, healing from the war, it wasn't enough. He missed the army. He missed the smell of diesel. He missed tanks. In 1948, in a move that baffled his family and doctors, Poole re-enlisted. The army, however, saw a one-legged man. They assigned him to the Transportation Corps. It was desk work, supply chains, logistics. It was a world of paper, not of Panzers. Nothing was further from the visceral thrill of commanding a Sherman in combat. Poole hated it. He immediately applied for a transfer back to his old unit. The 3rd Armored Division, the division his actions had helped make famous. The request was denied. He did not meet the physical standards. A medical discharge was recommended. The army he had given everything for was now trying to put him out to pasture. Poole refused to quit. He escalated. He wrote directly to General Roderick Allen, who had commanded the 2nd Armored Division during the war. Allen was a man who understood fighting. He remembered the reports. He remembered Poole's reputation. The crazy tank commander who charged Panthers and won. Allen made calls. He pulled strings. In 1948, Lafayette Poole finally came home. He was assigned to the 3rd Armored Division at Fort Knox, Kentucky. He would not be a tank commander. He would not see combat. But he would be an instructor in automotive mechanics, teaching a new generation of young tankers how to keep their Shermans running. It wasn't combat, but it was tanks. For Poole, it was enough. At Fort Knox, Staff Sergeant Lafayette Poole became a living legend. He was no longer just a man. He was a doctrine, a symbol. Instructors, trying to drill courage and tactical sense into green trainees, would point to the man with the prosthetic leg, the man who knew more about the guts of a Sherman than the engineers who designed it. That's Staff Sergeant Poole, they'd say. America's greatest tank ace, 12 Panzers, 258 vehicles. 81 days. He was the man who proved, with his own blood, that American tanks could beat superior German armor, provided one crucial variable was changed: the range. Some of the young trainees, raised on stories of German technological supremacy, didn't believe the numbers. They sounded like propaganda. Poole would simply show them his prosthetic leg. Then he would tell them about Villiers-Fossard, about charging Panthers at Fromentel, about the 3 burning Shermans that had been his home. The trainees, humbled, believed him after that. He had a nickname given to him by his own crew back in the war: War Daddy. It was a name that captured his dual nature, a demanding, uncompromising father figure in combat, and a leader who bore the full weight of their survival. He retired from the United States Army on September 19th, 1960, exactly 16 years to the day after losing his leg at Münsterbusch. He left with the rank of Chief Warrant Officer II after
The Allied
29
pincer
years of
movement
service.
closed inexorably around the German
He had given the
7th
army
near
his
Falaise,
youth,
sealing the
his
Falaise
body,
pocket.
and his tactical genius. The army gave him a pension and a medal case heavy with decorations: the Distinguished Service Cross, the Legion of Merit, the Silver Star with oak leaf cluster, the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, the Belgian Fourragère, and the French Legion of Honor. After retirement, he attended business college, became a preacher for $25 a week, and coached Little League Baseball. He never talked about the war unless someone asked. When they did, his answer was always the same: there were no heroes, no Rambos. We were a team. Every medal I received wasn't me. It was my team. This was not false
The
modesty.
relentless accuracy of
It
the
was the
artillery
core
proved
of his
devastating.
belief.
In moments,
Poole
the
was
Panzer Division
nominated
lost
twice
3 critical
for the
tanks.
Medal of Honor. The first time, the paperwork was lost in the bureaucratic chaos between France and Washington. The second time, the recommendation was denied. The justification being that his actions were a crew effort, not individual heroism. Poole agreed with that assessment. He always credited his crew, Richards, for driving straight into the fire, Oehler for being the fastest gunner in the ETO, Boggs for those impossible 4-second reloads, Close for protecting their flanks from infantry. Without them, Poole said, I'm just another dead tanker in a French field. His crew, the men who had lived his insane tactic, scattered after the war. Corporal Wilbert "Baby" Richards, the driver, said in interviews decades later that he thought Poole was insane the first time he ordered a full-speed charge at a Panther. But after 20 engagements, he understood. Poole wasn't reckless. He was a calculator. He knew, to the yard, the precise moment a Sherman 76 millimeters gun became lethal,
The Belgian Fourragère,
and the Panthers'
French
long-range
Legion of Honor.
advantage disappeared. That knowledge kept them alive. Private First Class Bert "Schoolboy" Close, the one 7-year-old bow gunner, recalled that Poole never wasted time. The orders were simple: enemy at 800 yards, full speed, fire at 300. That clarity, that lack of hesitation, was what saved
From the
them.
proving grounds
Corporal
of Fort Knox
Willis,
to the searing deserts
Groundhog,
of California, the Sherman
Aller,
crews
the
drilled
gunner,
relentlessly for the
returned from
battles
his
ahead.
medical evaluation in the U.S. to find his crew shattered, his commander crippled, and his replacement, Private King, dead. Oehler blamed himself, convinced that if he had been in the tank, the gun would not have jammed. Poole from his hospital bed, wrote to Oehler in 1945 and told him to stop. It was not about skill, he insisted. It was about an inexperienced loader under fire for the first time. King had died doing his job. That is all any soldier can do.
Tank number 1.
Technician 5th grade Dell
In the
Jailbird.
A stark
Boggs,
monument to
the loader, never spoke publicly about the war, but his family said he kept Poole's letters until he died. In one, Poole
Fresh from
wrote
the
that he
depot,
had pushed
these
them harder than
M4A1
any
Sherman
crew in the
tanks are ready
division,
for the front lines.
demanded
This one,
perfection,
in the mood, prepares
and they
for
had
deployment.
delivered. They were the best. Lafayette Green Poole died in his sleep on May 30th, 1991. He was 71. He was buried at Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery with full military honors. His grave marker is simple. It doesn't mention 12 Panzers or 258 vehicles, but his legacy was far from over. In 2014, the film Fury depicted a hard-charging Sherman commander nicknamed War Daddy, who led from the front. A character clearly based on Poole's real-life exploits and his actual nickname. More importantly, his tactics fundamentally influenced American armor doctrine. The principle of aggressive maneuver, of getting inside the enemy's engagement envelope, became standard training. Modern tank commanders still study his August 29th engagement, 4 Panzers destroyed in 6 minutes, as a masterclass in aggression. The Ronson, the death trap Sherman, wasn't the problem. The doctrine was. American tactics in Normandy kept Shermans at long range, where they were forced to play a sniper's game they were never designed to win. Poole proved that by changing the range, by forcing a point-blank brawl, the Sherman, with its faster turret traverse and superior crew coordination, could win. His 3 destroyed tanks tell that story. 3 times burned, 3 times he bailed out. The 3rd time, the cost was a leg and a life. But he had proven his point. The National Armor and Cavalry Museum at Fort Moore, Georgia, now preserves his legacy. Visitors can see his medals, his uniform, and the prosthetic
All
leg
right
he
now,
wore
children,
for
settle
45
down
years,
just a moment
a
so we can
silent
remember
testament
this
to the
day.
man who looked at the
You all
fatal
look
mathematics of his war and decided, with cold calculation and unflinching courage, to rewrite the equation